In this video, we're going to examine how Jesus viewed his own death. Based on the sort of earliest and the most consistent gospel traditions, Jesus' view of his own death is probably best understood through the lens of three principles: prophetic martyrdom, obedient faithfulness to God's mission, and a rejection of the temple-style sacrificial violence. So we're going to break this down and see how we can draw our understanding about Jesus' view. So, how did Jesus see his death? Did he see it as prophetic, or did he see it as some cultic sacrifice? Let's have a look at Luke 13 and verses 31 through to 33. At that very hour, some Pharisees came to Jesus and told him, "Leave this place and get away, because Herod wants to kill you." But Jesus replied, "Go and tell that fox, look, I will keep driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. Nevertheless, I must keep going today and tomorrow and the next day, for it is not admissible for a prophet to perish outside of Jerusalem. For it is not admissible for a prophet to perish outside of Jerusalem." Did you notice how Jesus identifies himself with the prophets, those who called Israel to justice and were often killed for it? Like Isaiah, who tradition informs us he was literally sawn in two. Jeremiah, threatened with death in the same way as Jesus was being threatened. Zechariah, murdered in the temple between the sanctuary and the altar. His cousin, John the Baptist, executed for speaking truth to power. And Jesus, he walked the same path, and he saw himself as walking the same path, knowing it could cost him his life. See, he accepted suffering as part of faithfulness to the doing of God's will. Notice the words he spoke in prayer to his Father in the garden, Gethsemane, on his final night. Luke 22 and verses 41 and 42. Verse 41. "And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them," his disciples who were with him, "and he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, where he knelt down and prayed, 'Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done.'" Now notice how Jesus, he does not frame his death as some sort of blood repayment, but as a painful obedience to God's will in the face of violent opposition, just as the prophets before him had experienced. He doesn't offer himself to God as some sacrificial animal. He offers obedience even unto death. And this is why he rebuked the whole temple sacrificial arrangement. Just think about this. Matthew 9 and verses 11 through to 13. When Jesus saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." What's Jesus doing there? He's quoting from the prophet Hosea to confront the religious leaders. He's using the scriptures, in other words. He disrupts the temple arrangement, doesn't he? Mark chapter 11 in verses 15 through to 17. Now, we've covered this before. That disruption, where he overturned the tables of the money changers and actually stopped all access into the temple, it was a direct symbolic challenge to the sacrificial system. And he speaks of judgment against the temple. Go to Mark chapter 13, read the whole chapter, and you find it is a judgment against the temple, not a fulfilling of the temple arrangement. How about the Last Supper? A covenant meal, not some temple ritual. Mark 14 and verse 24. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." See, he saw his death as the culmination of a conflict with injustice. He goes on in Mark 8 and verse 31. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the scribes, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. See, Jesus, he repeatedly predicts his rejection and death, not as some ritual sacrifice, but as the inevitable cost of confronting corruption, both against the Roman authorities and, of course, the temple authorities, the whole temple arrangement. So let's summarize using, my favorite method. I love this because I get a good overview of matters pertaining to the scriptures and how they relate to each other. So we've got 3 columns here in this little table. Jesus' view of his death. 3 columns, a theme, what Jesus said or did, and then the meaning of it, right? So we're going to start with the first theme, prophetic identity. A prophet cannot perish outside of Jerusalem. That's what he said. What did he mean? Well, he saw his death as part of the prophetic tradition. How about the next theme? Obedience. Not my will, but yours be done, in his prayer to his Father on that final night. Meaning what? Death as a faithful submission to God, not some sort of repayment to some angry God. No. What about the other theme? His critique of sacrifice. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, quoting from Hosea. He is rejecting the whole temple arrangement, the whole temple theology, if you like. How about New Covenant in blood? The Last Supper language. It's symbolic, isn't it? It's not some cultic practice or ritual. No, it's a covenant of love and loyalty to his Father. Non-violence? Well, he did not resist. Arrested he? No, he didn't fight back. No, he offered his life willingly, not to appease some wrathful God. You see, the fact is, he never teaches his death will replace the sacrificial system. He never teaches that. He never taught his impending death as some sort of sacrifice to appease this wrathful God. His death came as a result of obedience to his Father's wishes, in the same way as the prophets before him had lived their lives. That idea of a sacrificial death, it came afterwards, mostly from Paul and the unnamed writer of Hebrews. Now, we're going to be looking into the origin of the idea of where the sacrifice came in to Hebrew sort of worship, if you like, in another video very shortly. How did this idea get into Hebrew worship? And of course, we've begun examining Paul's theology in his letter to the Romans, where I hope the definitive texts will show how Paul's theology is so different from Jesus' teachings. So we individually have a choice. Whose teaching do you want to follow? The teachings of Jesus or the teachings of Paul? I've made my mind. I think that's been pretty obvious. So we look forward to the next time, the next video, in fact, when we will be going back to Romans and we'll be covering, chapters 9, 10, and 11. But in the meantime, thank you very much and see you soon.